Today we're going to talk about our typical year as a digital nomad. So in order to do that, we went back into time to figure out where we've traveled to. So we give you an idea of what normal or unnormal, irregular, digital nomad travel schedule could look like. Because people ask, well, what does it look like for a digital nomad? And the answer is, after going through all of mine, very weird and lots of Mexico. So before we get into that, Marissa, I just served a week and a half in Dakhla and was released yesterday on good behavior. And now I'm in France. And I am so happy to not be sandblasted in the face all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Chased by flies. Jeff. The only thing alive there are flies.
A lot.
Me. Barely. Not my soul wasn't alive.
You had a rough time, and for someone listening, that was in Morocco. So Jeff ended up with some friends in a kite surfing town after leaving Spain and a little place in Morocco that I feel like the kite surfers love because they like kite surfing so much. There's not much else there.
You've got to.
Which is often.
You've got to.
I feel like that's.
Gotta love
I know a couple kite surfing places like that. I've been in some towns in Mexico like that. But you don't kite surf, so because of that, what was your time there like?
Painful,
the time that you did.
Terrible. I didn't really get into it last episode, but it's funny.
It was still too fresh. You were wanting to, and you were like, "It's happening now."
It's a little
you kind of had to get through the trauma first.
Yeah, it was a little tender.
What was your trauma?
I didn't want to poke it just yet. So we get there and we go into our neighborhood, and the Airbnb says it's a quiet neighborhood. So we go in there, and it's quiet, all right. And the word neighborhood is quite a stretch as well. So we get there, I think 1:30 in the morning. We pull into what looks like a subdivision that they just started building, like a gated neighborhood, and then just give up on it. Like the front gates to the subdivision, it was like a gated community, were like broken gates, like frozen in place. Like everything there is just kind of frozen in place. So you get in there.
I didn't realize it was new. When you sent me all those like videos, I thought it was crumbling because it was like 30 years old.
I don't know that it's 30 years. It's hard to gauge because it's all just sun bleached and wind torn. But I mean, it's new relative to some of the other stuff around there. I mean, when you're going in, it's just you get chased by 3 dogs, wild dogs chasing. That was our welcome party. And then behind us comes some cops. So that was our second welcome party. And they pull us over, and the Airbnb host comes out, and they start going back and forth. And the Airbnb host's like, "It's fine. It's not about you. It's fine. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And we come to find out there's no address. It's not even on Google Maps. That whole subdivision does not exist. It looks like when you're pulling in there.
That's weird.
You ever seen those documentaries of like these nuclear fallout towns that aren't meant to have anybody? Like they'll set off test bombs to just see what happens to the town, like radiation, shit like that. That's what it was like. Like maybe 1 out of every 15 houses actually had somebody in it. The rest was just like hanging wires in front of the house, open windows with tarps blowing in the wind. There was one car that was like buried under sand. Everything's just buried under sand. It just looks like somebody just sucked the soul out of it. And it was just the bones of a place that might have existed at one point. It's your nightmare. It's just a dead place. It's a dead place. I don't
know what's worse, that or like the really old haunted places. They're like, I think you think that's worse.
At least there are ghosts that are alive there. There is no soul here. There's no life here. Nothing's alive. If you look off into the distance, 0 plants, just trash on the ground in heaps. I mean, the wild dogs that chase you, I guess that's alive. There's also a dead deer in front of the subdivision there that you have to drive past. That's fun. It's just wild. And then when you do go outside, you're like, okay, I'm going to stretch my legs. Couldn't be worse than inside. That's a prison cell that has a metal shutter that doesn't open and like hospital lighting. You go outside and it's just 30-mile-an-hour winds day and night, just blowing sand in your face the whole time.
Okay, so for someone listening, well, there's 2 things. You wrote a little bit about this in our email, which if you're not on our email newsletter and you'd like to me, go to beachcommute.com/email so you can get photos and updates of stuff as we go through these things. But a bunch of people wrote back in and said, like, Jeff, you're in the wrong place. Morocco, there's actually some really great places. You were in the wrong place. But for our podcast, which is Digital Nomad Experts, you are sounding like not much of the expert right here. So if I was listening to this podcast, and I say this like with so much love, right? Because you guys can see like we end up in these places too. If someone's listening and they're wondering like, why did you end up in Dakhla? Like we talk a lot about how to find good Airbnbs and places. So like, how did you end up in this situation?
So we had a gap in between a party that we had, a friend's birthday party, a destination party in Spain, and the summer camp that I'm going to starting on Monday. So it's a week-long summer camp in France. Got 2 weeks to fill, and a couple of my friends said, hey, we're going down to Morocco. It's like a beach town. It's like a kite surfing town. And Nikki, our friend, goes and says it's all set up. She's booked everything for us for years, from like 2000 to 2022, organized. And I was like, yeah, okay, sounds good. Check mark all the way across. Didn't even have to think about it. Yeah, I'm going to Morocco. Never been to Morocco before. Cool. Sounds great. And I mean, it is just kite surfing. That's it. If you go there for anything, it's only for kite surfing. There's really nothing else. There's no town. Like I said, the quiet neighborhood
in Dakhla was specifically, not in all of Morocco.
No, I've heard great things about other places in Morocco, but for me, this is like, you go and get Chinese food and you get terrible food poisoning. Like, yeah, there is good Chinese food out there, but I'm traumatized from the bad Chinese food.
Jeff's never going back to Morocco.
I think maybe 10 years for this thing to scab over and heal. We'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling. We'll check again in 2030. 2035.
Jeff was sending me videos when he first arrived. I could just feel your stress and the pressure. And you were also sick because you had like flight hopped to Europe. You'd like had some partying for like you were just a wreck. And I was just like, I've never
getting very ill, body stiff,
I've never been
aching.
so glad to like not be traveling in that moment. And so we share that. Like I share this. Yeah, like I could feel just like I've been in those situations where you just end. It's like you're trying to be adventurous. You say yes, you end up in places. And you're like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like this is not what I was expecting. But you did say so. You're in France right now. You're in Normandy.
I left early. Yeah, I escaped. I escaped Dakhla.
You left early, and I think I asked, was it because I was asking how it was there? You're just like, anywhere is better than, like, I forget how you phrased it, but I feel like you have a new appreciation where anything else is just good. So sometimes we need the bad to appreciate the good, you know?
Oh, yeah, like I said, I've had nothing but bitter for the last 2 weeks, so it's all sweet now, baby. Everything is great. Doesn't matter. I got a message from my Airbnb host right before is that like hour 15 of travel yesterday? Because I was just going to get the fuck out of there. Didn't matter what. I'm going all the way to where I need to be in France. Get a message at the 15th hour of travel from Airbnb host. There's been a sewage leak and the apartment smells. I'm like,
oh, you don't even care.
Dakhla strikes again. It's like the final boss. just keeps on following me around. It's all fine now, but whatever. It's not Dakhla.
That's hysterical. Anything is better. So yeah, Jeff bought some new glasses. If you're watching this on video on Spotify,
I'm a new man,
a new person.
I
like the glasses, and yeah, that's so funny. Well, that's a good intro to sometimes how we end up places. And this episode we are recording because one of you, our wonderful beach commuters, that's a mouthful to say, wrote into us and said, I think she had just started listening to the podcast recently, and we talk a lot about, like, as we look back at all the podcast episodes we do, sometimes we talk about location, sometimes you just hear us talk about, as Jeff just did, of where we are in moments. But she wanted to know, she was like, I hear you talk, it was like in fragments. She'd heard like, okay, you're here for 2 months, and then we talk another time about being somewhere else for a month or there. And she wrote to us saying, like, can you just share kind of chronologically, like year to year, what does your life as a digital nomad look like? And for her, I believe she was asking because she was saying, it sounded to her like we were going from like Europe to Asia to South America to the US, like, just popping all over the world, which sometimes we are a little bit, but there's usually a little more rationale to it. And it usually kind of goes by continent. We stay somewhere for a little while. So we wanted to share, we're going to go back in time year by year of our nomad life. I'm trying to share quickly just like where we were, how long we stayed, and the kind of reasons we progressed through the countries that we chose so you can get a good feel. And the reason we wanted to do more than just a 1-year snapshot is our years have looked really different. So as we were looking at this, different things are going on different years. We have stuff going on in our own lives, or maybe, COVID or whatever that looked like. So we're going to share what that's looked like and how long we stay and why and where we go in a brief way chronologically. So we've never done anything like this before. It took us some time to piece together. I think it surprised us, actually.
I forgot a whole year.
Yeah, Jeff was like, this isn't right. You forgot an entire
I've got
year.
DACA brain.
I've forgotten entire stints of places. I was just looking back. I had to go through my pictures and be like, where was I? So yeah, that's how we're going to start. So anything else, Jeff, before we jump in?
No, let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to start. So we'll go year by year. I started a couple years before Jeff, so I'm going to try to do these quickly, and then we'll kind of combine together. And it's actually interesting because I would say I really went full on in 2018. So I'm going to quickly share 2016 and 2017 because they were sort of like my little baby trials that I did, which I think is also helpful to hear because, so many of you listening, I feel like often feel overwhelmed of going from 0 to 100 of you're not a digital nomad and then you've got to go travel 12 months of the year, and it doesn't need to look like that. So the first year I started doing this was really 2016. I was fresh out. I had broken off an engagement. I was really lost trying to figure out, I didn't know if I wanted to live in Atlanta, New York, travel, go. I was bouncing all over. So I did 3, I'll just kind of talk about 3 quick trips I did that year was Chile, Colombia, and Iceland. And those were all kind of week or 2-week long trips. So I didn't do really any long-term travel. That was just sort of wetting my toes. Is that the phrase? That sounds weird. Dipping my toes.
Dipping my
That's
toes.
the one.
Wetting my beak.
I was like, that sound. I was like, something here is wrong.
Yeah.
Dipping my toes in the water. So the rest of the time I was bouncing between Atlanta, where my family is, New York, where I lived before, and then did some trips with some friends and family and just sort of got anyone who would travel with me, I would do. So I did a week in Chile, a week in Colombia, a week in Iceland, and then I did a week in Cuba to end the year, which I was not working remotely from because you really can't get Wi-Fi in Cuba. So that was super brief, but again, I just wanted to I was traveling a little more, doing some things, seeing how it felt, and it was very brief. 2017, I did a little more. I did some tests in Costa Rica because it was a familiar place to me. So in 2017, I went to Costa Rica. I think it was 2 weeks by myself. It was the first place I really traveled by myself, not to meet other people, not to do anything. I was like, let me just see how it feels to be alone in another country. So I spent most of the time in the U.S., went to Costa Rica for 2 weeks, came back. And then I actually did a bigger trip with friends. This was my kind of first, a little bit longer term. So I went to Spain. I met a bunch of my college roommates. One of my friends really wanted to do the Tomatina Festival, which is the largest tomato fight in the world. So I used that. A lot of you'll see is a reason of okay, I'll get there. And then I kept staying and found other friends to meet me. So I did Spain. We did Valencia, Tomatina Festival, Mallorca. I think I was in Spain for a total of 2 weeks. Then I went to France for another 2 weeks to Nice and Cannes. Went to Italy for another week, mostly to Venice. Went to the Czech Republic for another week or so. Popped back to the U.S. And then I ended the year in Mexico. I went to Tulum, again with a group of college friends. And then I stayed a little bit longer. I think I was only there 2 weeks. So you can see my first 2 years. I guess I did kind of a month-long Euro trip. But other than that, it was really just kind of a week here, 2 weeks there, testing the waters. 2018 was the first year I really started nomading. I started the year in Canada just for a week or two to go see if I could see the Northern Lights, and I was the middle of nowhere in Western Canada. Didn't really see the Northern Lights, but it was a cool trip in January. Went to Costa Rica back to the US, to Costa Rica for 2 weeks, back to the US, and this was really where I was preparing to do the first longer trip. So for me, it was really that September, October, November, December. So the last 4 months of 2018, I did the first longer term nomading. So I spent 6 weeks in Indonesia. I did a visa run just for a quick 24 hours in Singapore. I went that was kind of in the middle of Indonesia, of living in Bali. I went to Malaysia for about a week. In between two, so I did a Wi-Fi tribe chapter in Bali was the reason that I started there, and then Malaysia was just a week I did by myself in between, or actually another triber was there as well, and then went to Thailand for another 6 weeks, and that was a Wi-Fi tribe chapter. So this is where I was I had a dream to see Southeast Asia, so I did a lot of popping around. So Thailand, I stayed about 6 weeks in Chiang Mai. From there, I was meeting a friend in the Philippines, but I had a week in between the end of the chapter and when I needed to be in the Philippines. So I went to Myanmar, convinced a friend who was in Thailand with me to go to Myanmar for the week, which was one of the most epic places. And again, I just had 1 week and wanted to go somewhere new. You'll see 2018 and 2019 were really my years of like, I'm trying to get to every country. Like, let me go everywhere. I just kind of went loose. From there, I went to the Philippines for about 10 days. That was more vacation. Couldn't really work there and had a friend visiting. So it was just really like kind of island hopping to explore. From there, I met a friend in Cambodia for, I want to say we were there like a week or two. Went to Vietnam for another, I want to say it was like 7 or 10 days, something like that. I think maybe like 10 days in total. We did northern Vietnam and then a little bit in the south. Went to Laos for another, I think 2 weeks. It's like kind of just like checking off all those Southeast Asia. Like
Wow, is that
the
Laos? Wow.
Yeah, LAOS.
I thought it was Laos.
Yeah. People say it differently, Laos, but I think mostly people say like kind of Lao. But you can say, I want to say either way is appropriate. LAOS. And that was really like the backpacker trek. Like I feel like I just checked off like all those Southeast Asia kind of dream bucket list locations that there's so many more places I would love to go to, but just sort of did the traditional circuit. And then I had a friend's wedding in the US over New Year's Eve. So I went back I pretty much always come back for Christmas. I'm not even Christian. I'm not religious, but I just love the holidays at home. It's a really special time. So I went back for that, and then I'll stop there. You can do your 2019 first before I share mine. But that's the first kind of 3 years of my nomad life, so you can get a feel for like what that actually looked like. But yeah, any thoughts, Jeff, before we jump into yours? Your 2019?
I forgot that I actually experimented in 2018. I just remember that.
So we start with little experiments. What'd you do in 2018?
Yeah, I went down to, it wasn't abroad, but I went down to San Diego for a month.
Okay.
I rented an Airbnb, and it's just like, I'm going to go pop around different places down in LA out of an Airbnb and see what happens, see if I meet some people. I guess it wasn't really digital nomad-y. Well, it kind of was. I don't know.
And I think that's also really important because being a digital nomad doesn't mean you have to be living abroad. You can do it in your own country as well. So I love that that's kind of how you started. I think that's a great suggestion because some people are just curious about like, just go live another month in your own country.
Yeah. You know what we need after hearing all yours? We need ChatGPT to come up with some sort of visuals so that we can see this.
That'd be cool. Okay, We'll see if we can do that we can send out in the email or something.
I plugged something in, and we'll see what it pops out. While you're talking, I'm like, oh my god, there's just so many things we need. Like, what we need is like a world map with a whole bunch of yarn in different colors for each year or something like that.
Oh,
and
that
maybe
would
like
be cool.
time on each one a piece of yarn. Because it's hard to like take it. All the things we're talking about, so much to take in. All right, so 2018 experimented for 1 month down in San Diego, and then kind of got the bug a little bit, and then found the Wi-Fi tribe posting for Colombia somewhere around spring 2019. That's when I met Diego for the first time and Aura. Spent 6 weeks there, and went home, and then it's like, all right, I think there's a little bit of a gap there, maybe a few months. Like, how do I make this work? This doesn't matter what it takes. I'm going to throw the kitchen sink at this. It's going to happen. So went to Montreal for I went to Bolivia. We were there for 6 weeks, I think. 2018 was the end. And then 2019 was Colombia in the spring. And then Montreal in the fall. Oh, I'm sorry. Bolivia in the fall. We were there in like August or September, something like that. And then Montreal for about a month after that. And then Santa Teresa, Costa Rica towards the end. I think that ran up just until Christmas or so. That was my third time in Costa Rica, but it was the only time that it was actually workable from a digital nomad standpoint for me. Before I'd traveled there and it was like, can't even get a phone call out on the streets, and now it was workable out of Selena to take a few calls. And now I'm sure it's like totally fine. And then I went home for New Year's after that. So that's all of 2019.
Okay, so my 2019, that's where Jeff and I's lives merged, was 2019 when we met. I think I started the first 3 months of the year in the US in Atlanta, so I think I was there like Jan, Feb, March. And then I went to Europe to do Nomad Cruise. So if you've never heard of that, Nomad Cruise is what it sounds like. It is a bunch of nomads, but actually it's both nomads and aspiring digital nomads, kind of 50-50. who get together on, I also, cruises are like, I would actually love to do more of them. I really like the people, but I get really seasick. So it was a short one. But I flew to the Canary Islands, which is where it left from in Spain. So I think I spent about a week there before the cruise took off, because you kind of get to know people before. The cruise went to a couple other islands in the Canaries and then went to Morocco for a day, to Casablanca. So spent a day there. That was, maybe I'll go back one day. I know Jeff's have his raving reviews of it. I would like to spend some time in Marrakesh.
Sure, there's plenty of good stuff there.
I'd like to see it. So I just had a day on a cruise there in Morocco. Mm-hmm. And then that cruise ended in Lisbon. So I spent a little over 3 weeks in Lisbon in Portugal. I had no idea where I was going to go next from there. And everyone had always said, like, when you go on the cruise, people will stay, like, a lot of the people from there, there's like 100 of nomads who will stay afterwards. So I knew I wanted to stay for longer, but I had no idea. I was like, maybe I'll meet new people there. Maybe I had no idea what I was going to do. From there, I had a friend actually call me who I'd lived with in Thailand the year before. And she was like, I really want to go to Croatia. She knew I was in Lisbon. She's like, will you meet me there? So I said, okay. So I flew to Croatia. Our plan was to stay there for about 3 weeks. And instead, we ended up road tripping. So we were in the north of Croatia. We were there for about 2 days. And then our plan was just to get in a car. You have to drive. I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but you have to drive through Bosnia in order to get to, like, Bosnia kind of like splits up Croatia. So if you're going to drive by land, you have to go into Bosnia in order to get to the south of Croatia. So we got in a road trip. So we were just planning to drive through, but we ended up staying in Bosnia. And then these are all just like a couple days at a time. We just kind of kept going. We were like, we're really near. Oh, I forgot one of the countries. I think from there we went to Slovenia. From there, we went to Serbia, Kosovo, Macedonia, Albania, and Montenegro, and then back to Croatia. So we were in each of those other locations just for a day or two, hopping through just a fun road trip for no other reason, and like trying to work in between during the days. And it was like just some chaos of a road trip, but hitting a bunch of countries, and then landed back in Croatia. So I think I was in Croatia for a total of maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that, with all of these other countries kind of popped in for a day or two. I went back to the U.S. for a month. I went to Costa Rica for 2 weeks. That was a trip I'd had planned with friends and family, which is the reason I kind of went with them. Came back to the U.S. for another 2 weeks, and then I ended up going to Nigeria for a month with someone who I had met on Nomad Cruise. So he had like an epic itinerary planned of all these cool places, and I was like, I want to go. I want to go there. So he had this booked. I went to Nigeria for a month for that. Ended up coming, this was like 2019 was like a fucking wild. Now that I'm looking at my travel pattern, I was like, this did not make any sense. I was planning to travel a couple more places through Africa, but I was like over it. I left there. Ended up meeting a friend who I had traveled with to Myanmar, who I was with in Thailand, this is like as random as it gets. So I knew I was going to be doing Bolivia with you. It was like maybe 2 months later. And it had like a month in between where I was like, I could go anywhere. So I think I actually had to come back to the U.S. for a friend's bachelorette party. So I went to Miami. From there, I flew to Panama because my friend Murray was, I think he had to be there to get a visa for something. And he had to leave his passport in Panama City for like 3 weeks. So he was like, I have to be here. Do you want to come? And I was like, sure, I got nowhere else to go at the moment. And again, this is how nomad life works. So I spent a month in Bocas del Toro in Panama, which I loved. I think I was in Panama for about 5 weeks. I loved Panama. It was awesome. And then from there, flew to Bolivia, where I met up with Jeff and Diego. I think, Jeff, we were there for like 5 or 6 weeks in Bolivia.
Yeah, I want to say, including ayahuasca. That was a full week, then half a week. Yeah, it's like 5.5 weeks or so. Oh, I forgot about Paraguay. Yeah,
you forgot Paraguay. I made Jeff fly to Paraguay with. I'll share it for you. From Bolivia, Jeff and I flew to Paraguay because I was on a mission to get to every single country. Yeah, I think we spent like 4 or 5 days there or something. I think we both had to fly. I think I had to fly back for a friend's wedding. That was October. From there, I had a Wi-Fi Tribe chapter planned in Argentina. So I went to Argentina for a month. Did a little day trip to Uruguay. Checked off that. Don't need to go back. From there, I had this was like my year of Wi-Fi Tribe chapters. There was a Wi-Fi Tribe chapter in Oman that was, I think, November to December. So from Argentina, I think I came back to the U.S. for a couple weeks and then flew to Egypt. Again, I was like, I'm going to be in Oman I'm going to check out some places close by. So I went to Egypt for a week. I went to Jordan for 5 days. I went to Bahrain for 1 day, just kind of like on a layover on the way to Oman, where I spent 1 month. I did a weekend trip during that time to the UAE, to Dubai, and then headed back to the US for Christmas. So that was my 2019. And if you're thinking this sounds insane, I'm looking at this year and I'm like, I fucking lost my mind. I think that's also insane. If I was hearing this, I would be like, Marissa, that sounds like you paid $100,000 in flights. I don't know how I didn't. I didn't. It's like, somehow these are all affordable. I feel like we've talked about this sometimes as nomads. It's like you just kind of plan around flight prices and you can get good deals and you fly when the deals are good. And I don't know how I did that, to be honest, both from like price wise, somehow it worked, and from just life. I went from, I'm just looking now for a lot of, I did Latin America, I did Europe, I did Africa, I did South America, and then the Middle East. That was a weird, insane year. So
that is a weird, insane year.
That was like my first full year as nomad, and I just fucking went for it. I went for it. Me today could never do that, if you're listening. So again, I think it's important to hear how our different years have gone, because my years do not look like that right now.
Yeah, okay, so we're on 2020?
2020, COVID year. Now? What was your COVID year like, Jeff?
Yeah, that one was interesting. So it started in Puerto Escondido, when it was way less developed. And I remember we'd heard our friend Ben Spicer was.
And that's in Mexico, by the way.
Yeah, that's in Mexico. My new home. Our friend Ben Spicer. Do you know Ben?
I know of him through a lot of mutual. Never met him in person.
Okay, so he kept reading us these updates of this virus in China. He's like, "This is gonna be serious." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, Ben. It's fine." And so we spend a month there, and then I go home very briefly, and then I go to Europe. And the plan is go to France, take a train over to Belgium, and then all of a sudden lockdowns. Like, it just, bam, doors came shut. It was like March 18th or something like that, and flew home, emergency flight home, and then COVID lockdowns until I think July is when I said, fuck this, I'm done with this. I'm not locking down any longer, and went to Mexico. I went through various parts of Mexico for, I think, 4 to 5 months, all the way up until December. Feels like we were all in Mexico at that point.
Everybody was. It was the only place where anyone from any country was allowed.
It was. Yeah, that's why.
It was kind of fun. It was like every one of our nomad friends, who's normally all over the world, all convened in the same country for like the first time ever, and it was amazing.
It was amazing. It was like, it sounds terrible, but well, it's not terrible. But it was like one of the best. It was like one of the best travel years of my life.
Same.
So much fun. Planes were empty. Airbnbs were 10% of the cost. Oh my God. Besides all of the crazy Mexico rules that made no sense looking back, like the wet mats to wipe the COVID off.
I forgot about those.
You would walk into Quickie Marts and there'd be a wet mat, and they're like, oh, walk on the wet mat, and you gotta like.
Some places would spray you when you walked in. Do you remember that in Mexico?
Oh yeah.
You would walk through the door and you would get sprayed with stuff and walk through your shoes, and then apparently you were fine.
They'd spray the COVID off. Yeah, I remember I had to go into restaurants like that, and it was shaped like a gun, and it would shoot I don't know what the spray was, and they'd shoot me with it, and like a UV light would come out too, like you're gonna kill the external COVID on you. And there was another one in San Miguel de Allende. Anytime you go into the town square, which is outdoors, by the way, you'd have to walk through a spray machine. And we asked them what it is. They're like, it's grapefruit juice. Like, what? And they're like, yeah,
oh, really?
we have to prove that we're doing something. I'm like, oh my God, it's so funny. It's so funny. And then they do the temperature checks too. Coming off the plane.
I forgot.
You'd have to use so much hand sanitizer that you had like a latex glove on by the end of the day. It was so funny. I mean, that was really the only downside. Everything else was just so wide open. So that was
wow. So you're
4 to 5 months down there. I think it was July all the way through until around Christmas. We spent down there.
And you were in like the northern part of Mexico. I went to the south of Mexico. Whenever we do Mexico, Jeff and I are like in different parts.
Southern part.
Oh, in the south?
Yeah, I was down in Chiapas, close to Guatemala. San Miguel, which is
that's true.
Yeah.
North.
No, it was all southern, like around the Mexico City area. We were in Tehuataneo for a little bit. Yeah, we kind of like.
I guess I think of it south as not Playa. It's like south-ish compared to
non-Yucatan.
that area. Non-Yucatan. But yeah, so you were Mexico, Europe, Mexico for COVID year.
Yeah.
And I remember when you were coming home, I think you because I was still not knowing how serious it was, and I remember you telling me like, if I don't get on this flight, like I'm not going to be able to maybe get back to the States. And I was like, oh shit, this is real. And that was starting in Europe, and that's when I was like, maybe I should go home too. So my 2020, I happened to be randomly in Mexico the first 3 months of the year also. So you were in PE, I was in Playa. So I spent all of like Jan, Feb, and March in Playa. And I was planning to spend a little bit more time. I wasn't ready to go home. I was going to stay like another month or something. And then all the kind of COVID bubbling started happening up. And I decided to go back to Atlanta when you went to California. So I was back in Atlanta, I think for maybe 6 months or so. I stayed a little longer than you did till October. And then also got to the place where I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. Like I'm like mental health alone is no good. Like everybody's in Mexico. I feel like everyone's like, come. And I was like so nervous at first. I was like, I don't know if it's right to travel. I don't know if I should go back. Like it was just such a weird time, but I'm so glad I went. So I went back to Playa so I basically spent my bookends of 2020 in Playa in Mexico. So the first 3 months I was home for 6 months and then back in Mexico for the last 3 months and just had like the time of my life because it was literally like 30 to 50 of like my Nomad friends that were all in one place because, as I mentioned, it was the only country that would legally let, like, I don't know if you guys remember, but or you might not know if you're listening because you probably weren't traveling as much at that time, but you had friends from countries all over. There were such weird rules about different countries. So it was like Americans can travel here, but if you're coming from Italy, like you're not allowed to travel to like the same country as someone else. There was all sorts of rules depending on what country you were coming from or even where you're citizen.
The red
and a lot
zones
of people,
and the yellow zones.
There were red zones.
There was all different zones based on how many cases were popping
up.
And
they wouldn't let you in if you were like coming from a red zone. But this is where just nothing made sense. Was like, it was if your passport was from a red zone. So you could have been in a red zone and traveled to wherever if you were from a country with a green, like from a green zone or yellow zone. So it was just like a mess. But Mexico was just the Wild West as always. And they were like, we will let anybody from any country, like, come on in. Coming into Mexico where life is still just living. So it was like the best 3 months of my life in Playa. Like every 5 seconds. So it's like a little town as it is. And it's just everywhere I walked was just everyone I knew. And it was so fun. Like, I can't tell you how fun it was. It was just like the best. So I did that, and then, like always, I went back to the U.S. for Christmas and New Year's, and then, take us to 2021, Jeff.
2021, we booked out at the giant mansion in Colombia, and that's when I had my work crisis and decided that was the switching point where I just kind of broke down. I was burned out on work, and I talked to you a couple times about it, and then that was when I think it was less than a year after that when I left the job fully. Anyways, I was in Colombia at a mansion, beautiful spot, absolutely fucking miserable. There for 1 month, and then Colombia for another month after that. Went home for a little bit.
Will you explain, when you say a mansion, it's because you were with a lot of Nomad friends, and when you're with a lot of Nomad friends, you can rent a mansion. It's the same as the price as like a hotel. It
was legit a mansion. Yeah, it had a movie
COVID
theater.
Prices were still insane. I forgot about that.
Yeah. It had a movie theater in it, like an entire movie theater inside the place. It was absolutely enormous. My bedroom was huge. It was a mansion in a mansion. But it was out. It wasn't in any of the populated areas. Like, it was way out there, and you had to order a taxi to get into town. And I don't do so well.
I thrive in those environments. You do not do well. You're like, get me out of here. You need your coffee shops. Yeah. I'm like, I am good. Everyone's around. Don't ever leave. This is perfect. I like my compounds.
You know what? I like a compound right next to civilization. Like, it feels out there.
Yeah. Well, that's ideal.
Right there if you have to be. Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
I don't actually want to be remote or isolated. I want to feel
as long as I'm with a lot of great people, I am so happy. Like, you can put me in the middle of nowhere with like 10 great friends, and I'm like, this is fantastic.
Terrible cabin
fever. As long as it's like a big space and nature and stuff, I am so happy.
Ugh, miserable. Got out of there, went to town for about a month or so after that. Went home, and then this was, as you were talking, I'm like, I should plug in all this data into ChatGPT. And I got some awesome visualizations. This was
Oh, gosh.
one of the, actually broke down a histogram of how many days I traveled per year. This one was 182, so exactly half the year I was traveling. So that first half was there, and then we went from there to Spain, went to Barcelona for 5 weeks, went to Romania so that we could have some some Schengen time on the back end of our trip. As a reminder,
non-Schengen time.
We wanted some Schengen time left, so we went to a non-Schengen area. Yeah, so Romania doesn't count as Schengen, which is the big group of European countries that you only get a rolling 90 days in. So we decided to go to Romania. You decided to go to Romania at the same time. None of us knew why. So we spent some time in Bucharest, and that was what, 4 weeks in Bucharest, and then maybe 2 weeks in Brasov, something like that. I went to the Czech Republic for a week on a solo side quest. Went to Italy.
Solo side quest.
Yeah. Went to Italy for a month of terrible work and good food. Went to Austria for a week. Went to Hungary for 3 days. And then went home to get a triple hernia surgery in December.
I forgot that.
And I put a bow
Did I
on
know that? I forgot that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a triple hernia surgery. I put a bow on the end of 2021 and wrapped up that year healing at home. So what was yours? You had a very aggressive one.
I did.
Yeah,
I was still on my visit every country kick, and So this is an old me. It was also, I feel like, not as aggressive as 2019 from a different continent place, but I was moving quickly. So I spent the first 2 months of the year I spent in Costa Rica, I think the first 1 month. I spent January in Costa Rica. And it was kind of like an extension of that COVID year. It was a lot of the people who I had been with in Mexico at the end of 2020 all met me in Costa Rica in the beginning of 2021, and it was still that special nostalgic time where I even had some friends from home come meet me because people still didn't have to be in their offices who were non-nomad friends. It was just a magical time. So I don't remember. It was a month or two in Costa Rica. It was 2. I spent 2 months in Costa Rica. I don't know. Hard to say. From there, I went to Guatemala. That was the next country, I feel like, to open up to where everybody could go. So I had a ton of friends, everybody who was still in Mexico who didn't join me in Costa Rica. I feel like all the nomads that I knew went to Guatemala. So it was another one of those really kind of COVID. It was COVID-ish time, It was still COVID rules and weird things going on. But I spent about 6 weeks in Guatemala with a ton of it was 30 or 50 nomad friends. We all just went from Mexico to Guatemala. So that was really fun. So the beginning of my year was Costa Rica and Guatemala. From there, I went back to the U.S. for 3 months, spent a little home time. And then I went and met up with someone in Bulgaria. So I went to, I think a bunch of people were there for Nomad Fest. And I went right after that. So I stayed in Bulgaria for about 5 weeks. I actually really loved the time in Bansko. From there, we all met you in Romania. I think the guys that I was with also needed a non-Schengen place and just a good place to land. They had spent time in Bucharest before. And I was like, you guys are going there. So we all met there. So luckily a neighboring country. So we drove there in Romania for about a month. And then this is where I sped up a little bit. I went on a wild road trip. And I remember I was with a boyfriend at the time and we were we could either go spend a month or 2. I had a wedding to get to. I think I had 2 months to fill. So we're we could either go to Greece and just chill and be on some islands, which I should have done looking back. Or I was I've never been to these 10 countries. Let's go road tripping. I was still on my country chasing. So we went road tripping. So I did Hungary for a week in Budapest, Slovakia for about 3 days, Czech Republic in Prague for about 2 weeks. Did a week in Poland in 2 different cities. Went to Lithuania for 3 nights. Latvia for about 5 nights. That was my end of year Dakla. I hated Latvia. So that was that for me. I did about a day in Estonia and then found a really it was a $100 flight home from Madrid to Atlanta. So I flew to Spain for a day to Madrid. Flew back to the US. Again, I think I had a wedding that October and then I stayed October, November, December. So 3 months back in the US. So that was my 2021.
You learned a lot of lessons about travel.
2021 was a lesson year. That was my lesson to say, I don't want to travel to places just to say I traveled to places anymore. And I don't do that anymore. I'm proud. I really learned that. It took a lot, but I really learned that lesson.
So, what are we on to now? Is it 2022?
2022.
Okay, according to my stats, this is my least traveled year since becoming a digital nomad. I spent the beginning of the year in Mexico. We did a New Year's trip down in Ensenada. It's a little beach town. It was just meant for New Year's. We walked across the border in Tijuana, got a cab down there, partied on the beach, and then went home. Well, didn't go home, actually got COVID, and ended up having to stay an extra week isolated in one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It's like an amazing hotel with this beautiful view of the beach. But got the first time of getting COVID, I think, was Omicron. So I got stuck there for a little bit. Went home, and then I met our friend Jim in Colombia for, I think, about 2 months or so. Just kept extending as we do. I think all in all, about 2 months. Went home for a bit, went back to Colombia because I had a girlfriend in Colombia at that point, and then went back home, and then went back to Colombia for winter. I think I was there. Was I there for Christmas? I might have been there for Christmas. And that was it. I went to 2 countries that year. And a total travel time of 123 days, the least I have had in the full 6.5 years of doing this.
Which is still a lot. Years. It's like almost half a year. But why do you think that year you traveled less?
What year was that? Is 2022?
2022.
You know what? I know why. Wait, do I know why?
Is that when you quit your job?
Yes. It's because I quit my job and I was building my own thing and working with Beach Commute more full time.
Yeah.
So I just didn't really have the time to focus on travel.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Love it.
2 countries, 123 days. That seems like such a lightly traveled year. Like I'm already at 151 days this year, and we're just part of the way into June.
Heck, halfway through.
What a boring year.
Crazy to
Except
see.
for meeting my girlfriend at the time. That was great.
Yeah, and you stayed there, like in Colombia, more than you probably otherwise would have because of that. So, always different reasons, and that's why again we wanted to. It's like if we had only shown you guys just 1 year of any time, it doesn't give you the full picture of like how what your year might look like for various reasons. Of maybe you are working a certain thing, you quit a job, you start a business, you want to focus, maybe you have a family member who you have to come home and take care of, or you have family events, or you meet someone and you want to stay longer, and
exactly.
You meet someone in some country. Like I've met people who are also nomads, so I've traveled with them, but there's all different reasons. But that's interesting. I didn't realize you had such a slow 2022. That's like my last year. So for me, 2022, I started the year in Turks and Caicos for a week of just vacation. Yeah, that was with family. Vacation. So that was like, I think it was for like my family member's birthday, or what do we do? Yeah. I don't know. We do like a family trip once a year usually.
What Turks and Caicos is.
Oh, it's a tiny little island in the Caribbean. I know. Some people, I used to tell, like, my boyfriend at the time when I was like, I'm going to Turks and Caicos. He's like, you're going to, like, bananas and pancakes? I was like, I don't know why this is what you hear when I said Turk. He was a nomad. Yeah. He literally had never even heard of Turks and Caicos. I forget. It's not that common. I guess from Atlanta, like, more people travel there because it's not that far. I don't know. But it's a tiny, tiny little island in the Caribbean that's its own country. And it's gorgeous. Like, it's my kind of place of, like, white sand, blue water. But it's really more of like a vacation-y place. And like a lot of the people who live there are seasonally working there, or it's a weird dynamic of like people living there, and it's just full of like money as tourism. It's kind of bizarre, but it is a beautiful, beautiful place. So I spent a week in Turks and Caicos, and then went back to beautiful Mexico. Jeff and I spent a lot of time there in different parts, but I went back to Playa for Nomad Base, which is... So after COVID, when cruises shut down for quite a while after COVID, they switched to doing Nomad Base instead, which was like just kind of an in-person gathering. And it's sort of like the cruise it's like a business, like workshop meets social. I don't know. It's a weird thing. So anyway, I went to Playa for that. I was there for about 6 weeks. I always love to just live in Playa. It always feels good, and it's like a second home. From there, I did a Wi-Fi Tribe chapter in Mauritius. So this was one where I kind of like just flew like somewhere because I really wanted to go to this location. I was like, when else am I going to go to Mauritius for a month? There's like no other digital nomads there. It's not a nomad-y place. And there was a chapter happening there. I think it was the last Wi-Fi Tribe chapter I did back in 2022. So I went to Mauritius. I was there for 5 weeks. From there, we had to leave Mauritius. I was with our friend Danielle, and we just were trying to figure out, we're like, where do we go from here? So we just found out like where were the flights that made the most sense, and it was to Namibia. So we went to Namibia. I think I was there for like 3 or 4 weeks, did some road tripping through the country, and then stayed in the capital and just kind of like lived out a hotel and worked for a little while just to get stuff done. From there, I went to South Africa for about a month. It was just kind of like those are neighboring countries, and I had a lot of friends who were in, it's like the end of Cape Town season, as we know, so I went to South Africa. But I kind of got the tail end, like after everyone else was leaving. I spent a month in Cape Town. From there, I flew to Bali. Honestly, that was one of the only ones. I just went by myself, and I was like, I just want to be, I felt like I hadn't been since 2018. It was calling me back. So I went back to Bali for somewhere between 3 weeks and a month, and then went and met my boyfriend at the time, he was in Thailand. So I went there. I was going to be there for a month, and then I was planning to leave. Got in a scooter accident. I couldn't walk. I had a hole in my ankle.
Shot a hole in your ankle. That's right. You were a mess.
I was a fucking mess. So I stayed there a second month. Luckily, they were all still there like that whole time. So it was a really special time. There was like a group of guys there that I was with were so fun. So I stayed in Thailand for about 2 months. I had to come back for a cousin, I think it was my cousin's wedding. You'll see my theme is that I come back for people's weddings and Christmas. It's like pretty much my my theme. I'm like, yeah, it's like I'll go, and then like, I get called back when I like plan around events. So I came back, and I think I might have stayed the rest of the year, which was weird for me. And looking back now, I know I had mold poisoning then already, and I didn't know, but I was just exhausted. I was tired. I just stayed in the US for the next, like, it was pretty much the second half of the year, which was really unusual for me. But I didn't really feel that well. I didn't understand it then, and now I do, which I'll talk about. But so yeah, that was my 2022.
According to ChatGPT's numbers, this was my most traveled year with the most locations
2023
covered.
Was?
Yeah, it was
you.
264 days in 10 countries.
Wow.
Yeah, that was busy. So I started in Barcelona for a month, and then popped down to Cape Town, completely unplanned. Everybody was down there, as they are. It was like mid-January. This is prime time. A lot of the people had like kind of left after Christmas and New Year's, and it was still great. So I went down there for 2 months, and that was just amazing. Another place that one-way ticket sucked me in, had to do it. Went back to, I didn't want to fly all the way home. I'm so annoying with this. I don't like long flights like that, with a layover. So I'll just go and stay somewhere for a little while if it's a good stopping point, if it's like a big airport. And Brussels is a big airport. And I was due for my once every 3 year anniversary in Bruges to go to my favorite brewery. So I went there for a week. Went home for a very short period of time, maybe a few weeks. And then went to Antigua in Guatemala for a month. And that's a repeat for sure. I might even do it again this year. I don't know. It's it's just such a cool town. But I didn't do, what is it? What's it called? Acatenango? The big mountain that everybody climbs up?
Acatenango.
Yeah,
the volcano.
So I have to do that. I want to go back and do that because that was so fun that time. So after that, I went home for, again, just a few weeks, and then went to Romania for the music festival for 2 weeks. Went to the Serbia compound, the drug rehab center. It's a co-living place, people. It wasn't a drug rehab center.
Not actually.
Just kind of looked like it. I went there for a month, was in Tbilisi after that for roughly 4 or 5 weeks.
And that's in the country of Georgia.
In the country of Georgia, of course. Went to Georgia in Tbilisi for about 4 or 5 weeks. Spent about a week in Armenia, drove down there, drove back. Flew back to Mexico City for about 3 weeks, stayed with a couple friends down there before going to Oaxaca, where we did Day of the Dead, month, mezcal drinking, insanity for about 5 weeks. There was 50 nomads in town. I don't know what happened that year, but everybody just congregated for Day of the Dead. And it was cool.
That is weird. It's not every year that happens, but all of our friends went that year, yeah.
Everybody went there. Yeah, it was great. 5 weeks there. That brings us up until at the end of November, and then I went home for the holidays. So that one, that was 264 days traveled that year, 10 countries.
Wow.
That was a big one. And then, if you remember, I was beat after all that last year. Last year, I went straight off a cliff.
Sometimes we do that. And our years, again, they all look very different. So for 2023, for me, it's interesting as I look back on this. And again, I will share at some point more of this when I'm fully through it. But I had Lyme that I didn't know, and I got mold poisoning on top of that, kind of like 2021, 2022 timing from somewhere I'd actually lived in the States, weirdly enough. And I was not feeling so good, but just sort of like 2023, I still kind of pushed it, but I just thought I was kind of burned out on travel. I didn't know I was actually like toxic and like physically sick inside my body. I was just like, maybe it's just hard. Like, I don't know if I can do this as much. And yet I still took a little bit. So I started my year. I did 2 weeks in Costa Rica. I usually start the year there. I went to Mexico, back to Playa for about 6 weeks. I actually went there for a month-long zouk, which is like a Brazilian dance that I was learning and really loved. So there was this like month-long training in Playa. So I spent a month and a half there. From there, I went to Sri Lanka for a month to meet, and that was one where I was like, I just didn't have plans after Mexico, and our friend Danielle was like, she's one of my best travel friends, she was going and was like, come with me, and I said, okay. I'd always wanted to get there. She loved it, so I went to Sri Lanka. From there, we went to Nepal for about 3 weeks, and that was one, not super close, not super far, but my friend just really wanted to go hike through like the Himalayas there. So we went to Nepal, and then I was supposed to go to Japan from there for a month or more, and I didn't know where I was going to be after that. But my grandmother had passed away right as like it was like a day or two before I was supposed to leave Nepal to go to Japan. So I flew back to the States to California, came back to Atlanta after that. And that's where I just was like really unwell and didn't know why. So I actually, aside from, I think I went to a friend's wedding in Mexico for like a week or two in October that year. And I was so sick that I was like, I was in Playa where I normally love to stay. I had a lot of friends who were there for that wedding. And I was like, get me the fuck home. Like, I was like, I guess I'm just travel burned out. Again, I didn't know I was really sick, but that's how sick I was. It was like, I didn't even want to stay in my beloved, like, Mexico. So I pretty much spent the last 6 months of 2023 just back in the States being like, what's wrong with me? Why is there no point of, like, it's just, life is hard. I don't know why. And I don't want to go anywhere ever was kind of like how I was feeling. And so I just stayed put in 2023.
Yeah. That one was a quiet year for you.
Yeah.
And then 2024 was actually, I misspoke. 2024 was the quietest year for me. That was
more than 2022?
It was, yeah. According to this chart, only 70 days traveled last year.
Whoa.
By far the fewest.
That's it?
That's it. That's it, yeah.
We both had it.
I started off kind of hard. Like, 2023 was huge. That was a lot and a lot of time. Like, 75% of the year, and then spent just a little bit of time at home and went straight to Colombia in January. Went to Argentina for a month. Went to Mexico for a week or two. So really that was like kind of an 18-month stretch of almost exclusively abroad. And then I stayed home for 6 months. Why did I stay home for 6 months? We were working a lot. We were working a ton.
We were building a lot
year.
For Beach Commute. We were building out the Anywhere Atlas. We had launched a program. We were like heads down on Beach Commute.
Were.
And you were like so some years you just want to focus on work and don't travel as much. Yeah, we did a lot of big things last year for Beach Commute. It was a big Beach Commute year.
It really was, yeah. Yeah. It was like similar to when I changed over and stopped working in my company. Just didn't want the distraction of travel. Just was comfortable at home, just getting stuff done in a nice routine. Yeah, it's different all the time. Yeah. So, yeah, and then this last year, all I did was I went to camp in Mexico City back in November. So it was like a 6-month gap. Went 2 weeks there and then came home. So yeah, 70 days and 1, 2, 3 countries. That's all she wrote.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So for my 2024, I I actually found out, I think in the middle, like June of 2024, what was actually wrong with me, and life made sense. And I had really high mold toxicity. I found out, I actually didn't find out till earlier this year that I had Lyme and some other stuff going on. My body's been a mess. However, so 2024 was the first time I didn't go to a new country in like a decade, like, or since I started my nomad life. I did go a couple of places. I spent the first 2 months in Costa Rica, and for me, as you've heard, like, I go back to Costa Rica. I'm usually there Jan, Feb, and kind of like anytime it's winter here now, I like spend January, February, and kind of like November, December, I've been in Costa Rica, because it also feels like home at this point. It doesn't feel like, you know, adventure travel, like, and my body was just so ill that, like, it's helpful for me to be there, be in the beach, be at the ocean, and just kind of be. So I spent the first 2 months there, came back to the US for 2 months. I had a friend's wedding again in Playa, like in Mexico. And this is how I knew I was so sick. I think I didn't know what was wrong with me still at this point, but I went to Mexico for a week, and still I had a lot of friends living there, and I was like, I got to get the fuck back home. Like, I couldn't even deal with it, which like says so much to me, because normally I love to be there. So went for a week, came back to the US. I went to France at the time because
I forgot you went to France.
Yeah, and that was where like my boyfriend at the time's his family like was there, so we went to like, it was like his family's place, and it was sort of like, I don't know. I still didn't know I was that sick. I didn't really want to travel, but it was like, okay, this is special and important to you. Like, I will go. And I was like a wreck, but I went. Came back to the US. Again, I had to go to Mexico to renew my residency. So again, I had to go to Playa, and a normal, healthy me would have been like, great, I'm going to live here for a whole month, see my friends, hang out, be in Mexico, be at the beach. And still, I went for 1 week, went in as fast as I could, came back home because I was so sick, and then stayed in the US. And the last 2 months of the year, I spent October, November in Costa Rica as well. So I did like 2 trips to Mexico because I had to. I went to France for a vacation that I kind of like had to go on, and bookend my year in Costa Rica. But for the most part of all 2024, I was just in Atlanta, and that's when I found out what was actually wrong with me. And I was detoxing and just staying put and trying to heal, and just also really not feeling well.
Yeah.
But that was my 2024.
Yeah. It, like you guys hear, they vary wildly depending on what's going on in your life. It's still digital nomad life. It's just like, it could be a little on and off. Okay, so that brings us to 2025. I guess I've been off to the busiest start as a digital nomad after a break last year. I got to Mexico in mid-January, stayed all the way through till mid-May, went home for 2.5 weeks, and now I'm back out again. Went to Spain for a week, went to Morocco, bless it, for 2 weeks, and I'll be in France for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So far this year, it's 151 travel days out of about 180. It's a lot. I'm going home after this. I'm tired. It's a lot. I'm gonna go chill a little bit. I've got a couple of cool graphics. Let me share these real quick because I can do screen share now for those of you watching on Spotify. Here is a timeline of all my travel. Each different color is a different country in a different year. So like orange here is 2019, green is 2020, and then 2021, 2022. You can see 2023 was a ton of stuff, and then last year wasn't much, and then this year, big old bar in Mexico. And then I broke it down by travel days by year. So hopefully this year doesn't get to be like this year. I don't want that much. That's a little too much. But yeah, yay ChatGPT to the rescue again.
That's pretty cool. I'll have to put mine in and see how that looks. But that's awesome. So yeah, for 2025, for me, I spent the first 2 months, I spent January and most of February in Costa Rica. Again, my safe little haven there, and then came back to the US. And I will share, I finally found out why I was like getting even worse and worse. It had to do with some EMFs in the place I was trying to recover here have been just making me worse, which are electromagnetic frequency. That is a real thing. So yeah, I've been in the US just trying to recover. And yeah, so that puts us to, what month is it? It's June. I have no idea what the tail end of my 2025 will look like. I will say I'm just starting to feel well enough that the idea of traveling is like exciting again to me. I I am like physically, I feel like my body is not ready to get to all the new places that my mind is now excited about again. And I think that's a really good sign because I'm like, I want to go back to Costa Rica. I want to go to Mexico. I want to go somewhere new in theory. And I'm not ready yet. So maybe, I don't know, probably realistically the end of my year will end in either Costa Rica or Mexico. And then I'm thinking 2026 will be some sort of travel again. But that is that. So this is a lot we just shared. I feel like it's like a water hose of information of locations.
Fire hose.
And I think it's a fire hose of
Usually water comes out of
locations.
Usually.
But that's like the analogy that people give. You know, like when you like listen to a webinar, they're like, yeah, that was like a fire hose of information. It just means it's like a lot coming at you, Jeff. That's a phrase. That's a thing people say.
No. Fire hose is. Water hose is not.
Oh, did I say a water hose? I was like, yeah, I know, Jeff, a fire. I was like, okay, a fire hose.
Drink it out of the water hose. Drink it out of the fire hose.
I was like, Jeff, I know that's a thing.
Your
okay, the fire hose. I didn't realize that's what I said. Oh, jeez. Yeah, my brain has a lot of toxins in it. We'll get those out soon. But yes, okay, so a fire hose of locations coming at you. There we go. But what we hope you got from this episode, and again, thank you for writing us in and suggesting this. Let us know if you liked this episode, because I think it's you know, we had never done anything like this. Typically, we share more about like what it's like in each location and like information about being there so you can get a feel. This is really the bird's eye view that you could get. Like, we've never really talked chronologically of like what a year looks like. And as you can see and hear, you know, from Jeff's graphics, if you're not in our email list, I'm sure you'll probably I bet you'll send some cool graphics. So go to beachcommute.com/email if you want to see any of these graphics, and we send out daily remote job listings. But yeah, this whole episode, I think, is just a really important snapshot to see how nomad life can change over the years and what that means to you. So like Jeff said, you said 1 year you spent 70 days traveling in total, and other years it's, you know, like 2/3 of the year or more. So it really can look differently. And as you heard in the beginning of my nomad years, the very, very beginning, I was just dipping my toe in, testing out some things, a week or two here and there. And then I just went full on like psycho, bouncing over continents, and then calmed down a little bit as, you know, maybe as my body's not feeling well or COVID happens or, you know, whatever might be the case. There's lots of different situation scenarios. And even as Jeff said, there was 1 year where like he just really, like, we were working a ton on Beach Commute and wanted to have less distractions and travel less. So there's many different reasons that you can go slow, fast, and it can look like anything you want it to look like. So Jeff, as we covered all of this, did anything surprise you or any information you want to share for someone who might like be hearing this for the first time?
It was a lot. We felt like we went through so much there. Yeah, I mean, just basically it could mean anything to you. I think what you want to do is what's comfortable. I think that some of the mistakes that I made were just saying yes for the sake of it. It's like, oh, I should be traveling. Why am I not traveling? That not necessarily. I think if it's exciting to you, you should probably travel. But if you're just doing it to pass the time, you can get a little jaded and get a little burned out. So for now, I think a place should call to you for you to go there. I think it's the best advice because, yeah, I think you just get tired if you're not doing it with a purpose. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, I love that. So with that, if you got any value from this episode, if you want to leave a 5-star review, open up and click whatever stars are on the platform you're listening to. It helps other people find the podcast. It's really helpful for us and we appreciate it. And other than that, we will see you next week.